Alright, so right now with the story of My Hero Academia, Deku's mission is twofold: the mastery of One for All and the defeat of Shigaraki and All for One, with the former of course taking precedence over the other. A rather straightforward intention with a far less simple path of progression. And so with this video, we will be questioning how exactly Deku will go about achieving One for All 100%. And at that, I feel the immediate need to clarify what I mean by this. Technically, 100% isn't something new Deku needs to acquire. In fact, it's something he's possessed since the very moment he became the inheritor of the quirk. However, his ability to wield said quirk without the destruction of his own body is what we are actually aspiring towards. And to know where we need to go, I believe it is very important to know where we have been. With the very beginning of his time with this quirk, Deku failed to truly comprehend the concept of restraint. It was all or nothing with every single blow. And this would of course spell disaster, as he would immediately render himself unable to properly function. From there, his first move towards restraint was the sacrifice of his individual fingers. Considering just how powerful 100% truly is, even doing something like this was more than enough for the challenges he'd faced at the time. With this, the problem remained the same, but was now localized to be more tolerable. Following this, we received the first proper channeling of One for All's power with full cowl. With this, Deku was able to move away from using One for All as a final gambit or super move and more of a perpetual enhancement. And because this quirk is not native to his body, this is something that he had to learn, as opposed to what is otherwise a majorly intrinsic aspect for most. Full cowl, rather than isolating the power of one part of the body and potentially overexerting its limits, was the even spread of said power all across his body, thus providing major improvements to all aspects of his combat capabilities. At the time, he was able to tolerate 5% of the power without any self-induced injury. The next development from here would then be seen in his fight against Bakugo, as he was able to now handle 8% of the power. Now, what exactly led to this change was perhaps twofold. The forest training arc saw our various hero hopefuls be forced beyond their utmost limitations, and furthermore, be forged in fire with the entrance of the League of Villains. Deku in particular faced the likes of the physically dominating convict Muscular. And just before this particular encounter with Bakugo on account of the provisional license exam, Deku had patented his signature shoot style technique. This is when Deku discovered that he does in fact possess legs with the ability to kick. A momentous occasion that marked his departure from the shadow of his predecessor, All Might. He was beginning to truly make the power his own. Chronologically, not long after this, we would see the dramatic jump from 8% to 20% during the first leg of his fight against Overhaul. And this difference was a bit staggering to me, as with a 12% increase, it was more than he had ever been able to achieve prior, despite nothing of note actually transpiring between these 2 points to justify the difference. Now, to be fair, this state of 20% wasn't something he could indefinitely handle, but still, where exactly this sudden increase came from is beyond me. After this, by training with All Might prior to his battle against Gentle Criminal, Deku was able to retrace his steps and consolidate his power to a single body part, while also momentarily tapping into 20%, thus creating a devastating blast of wind. But in no time at all, with no notable instances, he'd make it up to a comfortable 20% just before the joint training battle, which subsequently allowed for the beginning of his advanced contact with the past users of the quirk. A figure which would be brought to a comfortable 30% prior to his fight against Shigaraki during the war arc on account of his 4 months of training under the #1 hero, Endeavor. To finally, what is now 45% control over One for All at this current point in the story. So again, how does he continue to rise higher? Well, I'd imagine the current agenda of the past users is our safest bet. Deku needs to master each of his new quirks. During his training with Endeavor, he was able to make Black Whip his own, and that's what we'll need to see from all the others. In his most recent fight against Muscular, Deku was dominant and more than certain of his victory against the villain. But even still, N wasn't entirely satisfied with his use of the Smokescreen quirk. The power of One for All has allowed for the sort of supercharging of all these quirks and subsequent quirk evolutions. But even still, because each of their original possessors were naturally gifted with said quirks, they possess a fundamental understanding of them even despite this. But I'd go as far as to argue that achieving this degree of mastery is only the beginning for Deku. You see, Black Whip in the time of Lariat was considered to be an unremarkable quirk possessed by an unremarkable hero. But now in the hands of Deku, it's able to hold multiple cars or even a bus, latch onto buildings a ways away, clutch and bind hulking behemoths, and be exuded from various points of the body. These are applications Lariat himself could have never achieved. The thing to remember about all these past users is that with the exception of the fourth, they all lived short lives. Not only that, but with the exception of perhaps Shimmer and Nana onwards, they all lived in turbulent times to varying degrees. For many, the era of heroes had yet to truly begin, and metahuman abilities were shunned and severely discriminated against, which is to say that there was no countrywide heroic curriculum, and if you had a quirk, you probably had to keep it on the low. So regardless of the knowledge these past users are able to beseech onto Deku, ultimately, they too lack experience themselves. But once Deku is capable of using each of these quirks to a level indistinguishable from that of their original possessors, I imagine that he'll be anywhere between 60 and 75% stability. The fight between One for All and All for One may be boiled down to a battle between raw power and utility, respectfully. One for All in the time of All Might had reached a threshold of power that superseded that of All for One tremendously. As such, the modifications of Shigaraki's body have been augmented with the repellent of said power in mind. And with Deku now being able to tap into the largely utility-based quirks of his predecessors, we find ourselves with both sides borrowing principles from the other, now making the outcome of such a bout all the more questionable. But listen, even without all this, Deku has become absurdly strong at this point, and at only 45%, he's already able to either challenge the best of the best or make the vast majority of characters look like small fry. So to go beyond even this will be very fascinating. Beyond the enhancement of the quirk, Deku has been enriching his body and building that combat IQ. It's through these trials and tribulations that he's come to be a far more tactical and observant individual, even beyond what was already a particular habit of his. Deku's progression is very impressive and is only becoming more so as despite his departure, he truly does exemplify the UA school motto of plus ultra. Now, as for the unexplained sudden leaps in control, the best I can do is attribute these to experience, that by being pushed to the brink over the course of some of these fights, he is able to subsequently become more acclimated to the power. Which is to say that his current crime-fighting pursuits may aid in this furtherance beyond mere quirk testing. But then again, it's really hard to challenge this guy at this point, so it's hard to say with certainty. But regardless, I hope you guys enjoyed the discussion. If so, please consider sticking around for more incredible My Hero Academia content by subscribing to Plot Armor with notifications on if you haven't already. And if you are so inclined, we do have a Patreon page where you can help us out even further, because when it comes to bringing you some of the best My Hero Academia content on the platform, Plot Armor has you covered. As always, I am Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.